Hi America! I'm about to share something that could directly impact you. The U.S. government just did something that could affect your income, your savings, and your healthcare. The U.S. House of Representatives just passed a budget resolution, and it's already making waves. So, is it a step forward or a step back? I know, all this budget talk can get confusing really fast. But don't worry, I'll break it down for you. Stick with me to the end to find out what's in the budget, who wins, who loses, and how it might impact you. Imagine a blueprint that decides who gets what in America, from healthcare to education to national defense. That's the federal budget. And the new budget resolution the House just passed could rewrite that blueprint for the next decade. Think of it like you're planning a family vacation. First you make a list of what you want to do, then you try and figure out how you're going to pay for it. But everyone has to agree on the plans, and the final vacation rarely looks exactly like what the first list did. A budget resolution is like the initial wish list. It sets targets for spending and revenue, but it doesn't actually spend any money. It just gives Congress a roadmap for making decisions on how the money will be spent later. The House is promising millions of dollars in tax cuts, but there's something they're not telling you. This particular budget resolution could impact the future of many programs Americans rely on. So let's dive into the details, and I'll show you how it all connects to you. Okay, so is this budget good for Americans? Well, that depends on who you ask. The people pushing the bills say the new budget is great because it promises to eliminate tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security. It also pledges $110 billion toward border security and $100 billion for military spending. That all sounds pretty good, right? But there's more to the story. For starters, these benefits aren't guaranteed to help everyone, and there's some concerning budget cuts baked into all of this. So what's on the House's wish list? Here are some key parts of the plan that aren't being talked about very much. $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. But who gets these tax cuts? Mostly corporations and the wealthiest Americans. 71% of the benefits will go to the top 20% of earners. $2 trillion in spending cuts. To help offset the tax cuts, the plan is to make cuts to programs like Medicaid, and that means the average American has to pay for it. $4 trillion debt ceiling increase. This allows the government to borrow even more money, increasing the deficit and passing the costs down to our kids and grandkids. While the House budget supports Trump's promise to increase border security and extend the tax cuts, falls short on his promise to reduce the deficit and conflicts with his promise not to touch Medicaid. So let's examine what's really at stake here. It's not as simple as good or bad. There's a lot of debate about whether this is a smart move for America, so let's look at both sides. Some say cutting taxes leads to more jobs and opportunities for the average American. Ways and Means Committee Chairman Jason Smith said, protecting and building on President Trump's signature tax cuts will deliver an America First economy to usher in a new golden age of prosperity. But reliable evidence to back this claim is hard to find. And numbers don't lie. An analysis by Penn Wharton University looked at potential real-world outcomes and found that spending cuts needed to offset the tax cuts would primarily impact programs that support some of our most vulnerable people. Programs like Medicaid, CHIP, school lunches, WIC, SNAP, farm subsidies, energy assistance, and disability insurance. Time to talk winners. No shocker here, wealthy individuals and big corporations are set to benefit the most from this budget. 71% of the tax benefits are expected to go to the top 20% of the wealthiest households. Small businesses do get some love, but let's be real, it's the big players that stand to benefit the most. And if you're a family in the middle or lower income brackets, it's a totally different story. Now the not so fun part. To pay for those tax cuts at the top, the budget proposes some major cuts to programs that millions of Americans rely on. We're talking about things like healthcare, food assistance, and other programs that help families with children, pregnant women, seniors, and people with disabilities. Specifically, the budget proposes $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid over the next decade, which would be the largest cut in Medicaid's history and impact as many as 20 million people. That's 20 million people who could struggle to afford doctor visits, prescriptions, and life-saving treatments. But it doesn't stop there. SNAP, which helps people buy groceries, could lose up to $230 billion. That would affect about 40% of people in America. And this is just a sample of what could happen. Check the description for a full list of essential services that could be on the line. And while some argue these cuts will reduce government spending, the reality is these programs generate economic activity. For instance, every dollar of SNAP benefits adds $1.54 to the economy. Cutting these programs is like kicking the can down the road. It leads to greater costs in the future, increases poverty, and weakens local economies. So what does all this mean for the economy as a whole? The budget could bring some tough times ahead. The spending cuts are supposed to reduce the deficit, but the $4.5 trillion in tax cuts outweigh the savings by more than 2 to 1. That's projected to add trillions to the national debt. And to handle the additional spending, the debt ceiling is expected to increase to $4 trillion, which means higher interest rates and more expensive loans. Okay, here's the bottom line. This budget resolution reflects what the administration wants, but doesn't reflect what the average American voter wants, and doesn't reflect what you want. For instance, polling shows that a solid majority of voters believe that Medicaid is working well. And did you know that 2/3 of adults in the U.S. say they have some connection to the Medicaid program? So this isn't just about numbers, it's about what we value as a society. It's about whether we want to invest in our future or hand tax breaks to the wealthy. And here's the good news. If you're not happy with the direction that things are going, there's still time to do something about it. Keep watching. Okay, the House has spoken, but that's only half the battle. Now the resolution heads to the Senate, and this is where it could get messy. The House and the Senate have to agree on every single detail, including those big, massive cuts. And they have to do it all by March 14th or risk government shutdown. The future of the nation's economy and your future relies on what happens in the next 2 weeks. As a voter, you have a say in what happens next. Here's some things you can do to make sure your voice is heard. To make a difference, voters have to join together and be a royal pain. First, call your senators, flood their inboxes, and tell them how you feel about these tax cuts and tax breaks. Visit senate.gov to find out who your senators are and get their contact details, or call the U.S. Capitol Switchboard to get connected. Make sure your voice is heard. Second, stay informed. Visit Congress's official website to keep track of the budget discussions and votes. Use All Sides Bias Checker to find unbiased news outlets for updates and information on how budget changes could impact you and your community. Third, show up. Attend a town hall or visit your senator's office to speak directly to them about your concerns. Use townhallproject.com to find town halls in your area and make your voice heard face to face. Check the description for direct links to all of these resources. Change isn't going to happen if we sit back and scroll on our phones all day. We can let the politicians push this through, or we can demand a better future. It's time to let your voice be heard. Don't let this moment pass. I'll keep you updated as things unfold. So stay tuned, stay informed, and thanks for watching. Now get out there and make your voice heard.